All right, so today I wanted to start by talking about an interesting story I see in the Ottawa Citizen, and it's titled Canadian Military Wants to Establish New Organization to Use Propaganda, Other Techniques to, let's just pull it up here, influence Canadians. Now, um, the Canadian Forces wants to establish a new organization that will use propaganda and other techniques to try to influence the attitudes, beliefs, and behaviors of Canadians. According to documents obtained by the newspaper, the plan comes on the heels of the Canadian Forces spending more than 1 million to train public affairs officers on behavior modification techniques of the same sort used by the parent firm Cambridge Analytica, as well as controversial and bizarre propaganda training mission in which the military forged letters from the Nova Scotia government warning the public that wolves were wandering the province. I'm not going to read this whole article because it's kind of pointless, but nonetheless, um, this is a bad sign, and it's a bad sign because actually it's a good sign in some ways. Uh, on the good side, well, like I always point out too, Canada right now is pretty much hopeless, right? There's pretty much no hope for Canada right now. But on the flip side, if there was literally no hope, then all this kind of stuff wouldn't be necessary, right? All the brainwashing and propaganda that the mainstream media and public schools and universities pump out, um, it would be completely unnecessary, at least to the degree that they do it if it was hopeless, right? So there definitely is still hope. That's the first thing to point out. But on the flip side, the reason that they're doing stuff like this, I think, is that they view they if they ramp this up, that they can put that final nail in the coffin, that there will be no turning back. Which is why I think that the coming years are so important to whether or not Canada is gonna go completely belly up and become hopeless or not. So this is a pretty important story that I think needs to be talked about. That the government is very open about propagandizing its citizens, or at the very least, the military, right? And this kind of stuff always branches out, right? They don't do something like this and just quit it overnight. They'll experiment on the military. I mean, that's how a lot of stuff works, right? They experiment on the military, and then whenever they find the most effective techniques, they will begin to employ it on the general public, right? And I think that's partially because the military, I mean, the average person in the military, they're probably someone who's a little bit more good at critical thinking. They're probably a little harder to propagandize, and if they can come up with an effective way to use on the military, then they'll know that it's going to work on the public. So this is something that people should be concerned about. It should be talked about, but it probably won't. You're never going to see the mainstream media talking about this. You're never going to hear um, getting it taught in schools. You're never going to hear any of that. And why is that? Because people just don't want to know. They want to believe that, oh, the government's there to help you. Big daddy government. They just want to help people. But no, the reality is that's not why they exist. The government exists to grow the government. Basically, they want more power. They want more influence. A lot of these people in government. They're egomaniacs. They're power hungry, and they get off on you know beating up on the little guy, and the little guy being the average citizen. So anyway, the next thing to bring up here is from Kamala Harris with Donald Trump Jr. responding here by saying, very helpful of Kamala to publicly endorse socialism on Twitter today. I mean, we all knew it was coming, but she's saying it out loud now. Thank you. Now, again, we're at the point to where we have, I mean, here's the thing. Kamala Harris is going to be every bit as influential as Joe Biden is if he gets elected, right? He's going to be every bit or she's going to be every bit as influential. Why is that? Because Joe Biden is just a puppet, right? He's just a puppet. If he does get elected, it's highly unlikely that he gets reelected because he's so old and because he clearly already has early stage Alzheimer's, sorry, which means it's probably going to be Kamala Harris calling the shots at one point or another, and she is crazy, right? And the problem too is Biden himself isn't. I mean, when you add in all the corruption and stuff, he's a horrible candidate. But just his politics aren't that bad. They're pretty bad, but they're not that bad. Kamala Harris is very bad. She is one of the furthest out there politicians in the states, at least major ones. And if she is president, things will be things will get it pretty ugly. So that's an important thing to bring up too. This is from David Samadi, and he points out here flu cases are down 98% across the globe. Now, this is something that a lot of people have been pointing out, and what exactly is happening here? Like everybody's all worried about the virus, but nobody's pointing out that the flu is basically non-existent anymore. And why is that? Is it because people who have the flu are assumed to have the virus, or are we just no longer testing for the flu? Like, what exactly is going on here? We know the flu is just as dangerous as the virus, right? Like the death rate's almost the same. I mean, it's lower for any, if you're under 50, it's lower. If you're under 20, it's much lower. So why are we completely ignoring the flu? I think it is because everybody's paranoid about the virus because no one can exploit the flu to grab power. I mean, the pharmaceutical companies are already making as much money as they can off the flu, right? And we know that the pharmaceutical companies are the ones that donate the most money to these mainstream media outlets. So of course they're not going to be talking about the flu. These pharma companies want to make money off the virus, so that's what the mainstream media is going to talk about, which is just one of the millionth reasons why no one should watch the mainstream media. Anybody who watches CBC or CNN or anything on the TV, pretty much, and actually takes their word for it, like I don't have words for you, especially younger people. It's one thing if you're 80 years old and you don't even know what the internet is, or at the very least how to use it. But if you're young enough to be able to look this stuff up for yourself competently, and you still believe what the TV tells you, like again, I don't have words for how ignorant the people are. And this is the big problem too, that everybody constantly talks about conflict of interest when it comes to one thing or the other, but yet they completely ignore it when it comes to this kind of stuff. It's very interesting. It's very interesting. And the last thing I wanted to bring up here is from James Woods. Now, again, this is something a lot of people probably seen, but I wanted to touch on it nonetheless. And it's a video of these guys like attacking a police car basically, and the cops doing pretty much nothing. I don't know if there's one cop in the car or if there's two. I don't even remember. But um, why are we putting up with? And this happened in Canada too. I mean, James Woods is an American, but I believe this was in Ottawa or somewhere. Nonetheless, it was in Canada. And the cops just let him do it. I don't know if these guys were arrested. I haven't heard anything more, but why are we letting this stuff happen? Like this is where we're at as a country. That's, you know, we have a large percent of the population that the people they're most concerned about are people who want to have family get-togethers, right? They want to have a party, at Halloween. They're the worst people in the world, and those are the people we should be worried about. But the people actually committing violent crime, we don't care about, right? We're going to go after illegal gun owners who their murder rate is lower than the average person. Their murder rate is lower than they're less likely to be convicted of crimes than cops. They're the most law-abiding people amongst in society, pretty much. And yet we're going after them like to the nth degree in Canada. But yeah, we don't care about stuff like this. Like this is just how backwards we are as a society right now. And people probably are wondering, well, why is that? It's simply because, when it comes to people, their morals and their ethics basically end whenever the higher the chances of blowback, the less likely they're gonna have morals and ethics, right? Like, it's the same stuff. It's like with Biden, right? Whenever some random person does something racist, the people are all over it, right? They're all over it. But when a big name politician does something, people could care less. Why and why is that? It's because they know people who support these people who will get mad at them if they call them out, right? But and this is the thing too, that whenever the chances of blowback are low, everybody's moral and ethical compass is good, right? But whenever the chances of blowback start to go up, whenever the chances of um, pissing off the wrong person goes up, then all of a sudden people's moral and ethical compasses suddenly go away, right? And this is the same stuff with that too, that people are worried about crime and all this kind of stuff, but yet when it's a black guy doing it, then all of a sudden they don't care, right? It must be racism. Even if you're running at the cops with a knife, it's still racism, right? This is just how insane people are. So, I mean, if you're the cops in this scenario, I don't know exactly what you would have did. I mean, I probably would have just started the car, backed up, or went forward, got out, you know, probably tase the guys. If that didn't work, they get shot, right? That's how it works. Like I don't understand why this is so confusing. I don't understand why it has to be so confusing. And the reason that it's so confusing is that we have a large percent of the population that are propagandized to the point that they're propagandized to the point that they have no ability to think critically when it comes to this kind of stuff. They're propagandized to hate cops. And again, I have plenty of problems with cops myself, but they're at least legitimate concerns, right? And this is the big problem nowadays is that cops need to be walking on eggshells constantly, and because of that, um, bad stuff starts to happen. Like bad stuff starts to happen. And here's the thing: if we're gonna have democracy too, like this is the massive contradiction too, that if we're gonna have this system, then people need to be held to it, right? This is the problem too, that people want to criticize the system, but yet they turn around and will defend to the nth degree the system. Like it's just pure insanity, and these people are just making their arguments as they go by or as they go along. So anyway, that's what I wanted to talk about today. If you liked the video, make sure you hit that like and subscribe. If you haven't already, make sure you check out those links in the description. Follow me on those other platforms. If you'd like to donate, I got some links for that as well. So make sure you check that stuff out.